both service coordinators for the Refugee Youth Project, a partner site with Baltimore Community Center Colleges and Loyola University. And it's pretty much a tutoring program for over 100 refugee children who are recently relocated and settled in Baltimore. Our presentation is entitled Reflection in Action, a Toolkit, and it's basically going to be like a model or a toolkit that will be useful for further reflection on direct service experiences or other experiences of service. Can I ask, who here is engaged in any kind of direct service or recent service? Oh, good. Okay. So that's kind of going to be the purpose of our presentation. So first we want to go over why reflect. And Marcel Proust says, the real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. And John Dewey came up with the idea that it really, in our sensory experiences, whether positive or negative, is where we actually can learn and find meaning. He says, I had the experience, but I missed the meaning. And so really what we come to find is our direct service experiences can translate into kind of an educative experience about social justice issues. And the tool for facilitating this is critical structured reflection. This thought creates new meaning and it leads to growth along your spectrum of where you fall as a civic-minded citizen. So basically, the kind of model that we're going to focus on starts with a concrete experience, and from that model you naturally are going to go to reflective observation, and then from your reflection, which is what we're going to focus on today, the goal is to have kind of an abstract conceptualization, and then from that conceptualization you will hopefully end up in active experimentation. So why go through all this? What will volunteers gain? We hope that volunteers, or you guys today, will learn how to gain a deeper awareness of self and a new perspective of others and their experiences as they relate and differ from your own, and also a deeper perspective of social issues, which, as I said before, will lead to kind of more of an abstract conceptualization of social justice and what that means. More importantly, we hope that you gain an awareness of your potential to make a change and the potential of all of us individually to make a significant and concrete change. And with that, we have a transition of a mode of consciousness as to kind of like civic mindedness versus just a charity doer, and more towards an actual citizen of the world and where you fall on your continuum of service. So, reflection is natural. Anytime you have an experience, the natural reaction is to think about it. The mind processes the action so as to gain insight into the experience for greater meaning. So why have a structured reflection? And the purposes of structured reflection are that it calls attention to your natural reflection process and provides a new set of questions that you might not have come to in your own natural reflection. Structured reflection also introduces you to new ways of learning from your service and the people you work with. And although a lot of you said you are involved in direct service, you can also use structured reflection to kind of digest and, as Sandra said, debrief experiences you have through media or daily experiences that you have. Structured reflection is also good to share a learning process with a group of people who are having the same experience, which is a little tough in the context of our talk today because we all haven't come from the same direct service experiences, but we will see, even in the differences of our experiences, that there is kind of a web of connection with what we are gaining and reflecting on. And finally, the last two are to build relationships and understanding between people with different perspectives, which is definitely what we will do today. And finally, to give you a set of tools for leading such experiences for others. And this will really be important for, as I said, making the transition to kind of the abstract conceptualization. The foundations of the toolkit that we're going to present to you today is based on Terry Borton's model, which was developed in 1970, the what, so what, and now what model. The first component of the model is the what, and the reflection process begins with kind of a defining and sharing of the different components of the experience. This part, the what part, is important because it's necessary to kind of exchange the reactions and observations that you and your group members and fellow volunteers have made after a direct service experience. It allows volunteers to kind of relive their service experience and think back to any thoughts, feelings, emotions, questions they had, what you saw, what you heard, what you did. In essence, you want to get everything that you experienced during your service experience out on the table, and from all these sensory experiences, we'll see, what we actually did and saw and heard, what we can learn from that. So this section of the what in your reflection will be activities that are going to kind of challenge the volunteers to facilitate a deeper sharing of their experience and what they actually experienced. And we're going to do the what component of a reflection, or an example of the what component of reflection right now. So an example of an activity that you can do during a reflection for the what component would be the quotes or solarium cards. And I know as some people came in, you saw the cards laid on the back of the table. So what we're going to have everyone do is get up. And on the back table, there's a long line of cards. And what I want you to do is look throughout the cards. They all have images on them. And try to think or see if you can find an image that really jars a memory that you have from your most recent direct service experience. It can jar something specific, something very general, just anything you see that really draws to you and talks about something that you heard, saw, any thoughts you have, questions you have, something that really relates to your direct, what you directly experienced in service. And if you haven't had a recent direct service experience, you can do, based on an experience that you've had in Baltimore, specifically with a person perhaps in a marginalized, a member of a marginalized population, or you can also do something that may remind you or jar you from what we just experienced in Sandra's presentation. So what we're going to do is go along the back and just take a picture. It's really a chance for you as volunteers and for facilitators, for your volunteers that you're facilitating, to kind of relive their experience and recall everything that they did. And the reason for this is that because it will play into them building kind of a pattern of their experiences, which will lead into our next component, the so what. And the so what is the part of a reflection where there's analyzing and kind of evaluating how the patterns and dynamics of our experiences build a context. And within that context, volunteers can find a route to really divulge and kind of dissect the larger social justice issue in which their site is attempting to address. So the so what is important because the goal of the section is to give kind of a broader context for direct service the participants have been doing. So during this section, you would provide an opportunity for your volunteers to learn more about the systematic social justice issue in which their site pertains, whether it be food and hunger, the experience of homelessness, women's issues, domestic abuse, refugee or international issues for our specific site, or different disabilities. So just to do kind of an example of a so what activity, we're going to show 2 video clips and kind of have a little discussion right after about what the video clips really kind of what stood out for us.
And if you were to do this activity, you'd often choose the social justice issue that best pertains to, like we often choose education issues or refugee rights issues. So, and they're usually
I'll go over the last 2 just for time's sake, but just as some ideas.
Now we're going to the third piece of the toolkit, and the reflection model, which is the now what, and that's kind of the call to action after. We don't expect after one reflection session to all of a sudden have this revelation of what you're going to do, but just to begin to plan and develop for yourself personally an idea of what you want to take from your service experience and how you're going to incorporate that into your daily life or careers, or just the way you talk about your experiences with others. So this piece also allows you to consider the broader implications of your service experience and apply your learning, like I said. And it's kind of like the next step, that once you leave the reflection, that's kind of what your focus is on. You've unpacked everything, or not everything, but ideally you've unpacked a lot of your service experiences and had the opportunity to discuss with others what you've done, and you're always gaining new perspectives from the other volunteers, and a great opportunity to kind of coordinate and plan personally and as a group. Sometimes it's a lot of a call to action as a group. The closing activity, this is also kind of like to see where you are on this continuum of service and then evaluate yourself and then come together as a group. So our closing activity is just to get in a circle, which kind of like it's a large circle.
To get in a circle.
But ideally you'd get in a circle and kind of show solidarity, because we are with each other in our experiences, and we all have different ones. So we won't. But if anyone has a word to describe what they've learned or what they're going to take back with their school, either from a service experience or just your time so far, it's early into the day, but something you want to take with you back to your campus.
So it would be two things that you want to talk about. One thing that you learned, and then one thing that you want to take back, either to your service group or to your campus, that you gained this morning from both. So any volunteers?
Happens with reflection. So the ultimate goal for volunteers is kind of to integrate the service into their life and then develop it through this spirit of civic mindedness and service.
I was just thinking about something else. A lot of times when we enter into a service experience, we're always thinking about what we are going to be doing for that community. And reflection is so important, because you leave that experience, it's like how much you have gained in return. So you're thinking, I'm going to be given so much, but then you receive so much more. So I guess this is another will be helpful for me working with the students, and hopefully that they'll get to that point.
Yes, I'm glad that you said that. We talk about all the time the kind of like mutuality of service, and reflection is really important. And kind of when you leave a community that you are in service with, to come back to the community of your own peers and talk about what, how has this affected us, and what did we get, because we did, we are giving our time and our presence, and we're being present, but the community is also giving their time and being present with us. So there's definitely a mutual aspect, and that kind of underlies the difference between like service versus charity and serving versus helping. And so really developing kind of the critical consciousness at the end, and being able to think critically about your actions and how your direct experiences do affect you and what that means. And I love that you brought up motivation as the feeling that you're kind of having, because you do, as volunteers, want to leave any experience of direct service motivated, and as facilitators for volunteers, you want to have the ability to kind of facilitate that motivation for them, to learn more about something that they're interested in, or to become more passionate about an issue, but again, not to have any kind of misperception or kind of misunderstanding about the population in which they were working, but better have the drive to want to live and work as an ally. And we always talk about the difference between an advocate versus an ally. And advocacy is great, but being an ally is really having, the ability to say, well, I know a person, who may be experiencing something like this, and because I know them and we have a connection, I'm an ally. I'm with them. I'm not, working for them. I'm working with them. So that's kind of the goal at the end. And we wanted to just to leave with this quote.
With With time, it becomes clear that the experience of service changes the roles of giver and receiver, subverts preconceptions and prejudices, and encourages new thinking about oneself and about one's assumptions concerning others and the world at large.
And so that kind of just umbrellas what we have. And we do have a couple of resources up here. If there are any facilitators, and I know you're facilitating, just kind of a guide for kind of really structuring a reflection and facilitating it and breaking down the what, so what, now what piece. And a lot of times it seems like it's kind of trivial, but it really is the structure of the reflection that kind of guides the transformation between from the descriptive to the analytical to the abstract conception, and that's what's really important. So we want to bring Sandra back up just to see if you guys have any questions for anyone.
Where can we get these cards?
Solarium cards.
The consolarium cards, I know Loyola has various packets, apparently very out there.
Oh, okay.
They're consolarium cards, and
I
they have
would-
different pictures.
I would